Something huge is happening with the MonsterVerse right now, and most people are sleeping on the full picture. The WGA writing credits for Godzilla x Kong Supernova quietly dropped, and buried inside them was a Toho credit for Space Godzilla. And once the title Supernova got revealed back in May through that production announcement video, any lingering doubt basically evaporated. Space Godzilla is coming to the MonsterVerse, and that single detail reframes everything the franchise has been building toward. This crystalline clone of Godzilla, born out in space, first appeared in the Toho universe back in 1994 and has never made it to a Hollywood production. Now he's headlining the 6th MonsterVerse film, dropping March 26th, 2027, and it finally gives this franchise the extraterrestrial threat it's been teasing since Ghidorah showed up, and the first hints of alien origin started creeping into the mythology. Grant Sputore took over directing duties after Adam Wingard had to step away due to scheduling conflicts, with Dave Callaham handling the screenplay alongside co-writer Michael Lloyd Green. As massive as Supernova is, and it genuinely is the center of the MonsterVerse conversation right now, there's a parallel story building in the background that doesn't get nearly enough attention. It's been there since before The New Empire even hit theaters. The idea of a Son of Kong film built around Zuko has actual development history behind it. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Adam Wingard was actively seeding the two Godzilla Kong crossovers with spin-off concepts as early as 2021, and a Son of Kong movie was explicitly one of them. The fact that Zuko ended up in New Empire wasn't a spontaneous creative choice. That character was designed from the ground up to open a door. The origin of the whole idea traces back to producer Mary Parent, who brought it up during a story meeting while working on Godzilla vs. Kong. She mentioned the concept of a Son of Kong, and nobody at the table initially knew what that meant. Wingard held onto it for 2 years before figuring out how to make it work inside the mythology. What he landed on was Zuko, a young ape introduced as an adversary to Kong before the dynamic shifts into something closer to reluctant guardianship. Wingard described their relationship as more Homer and Bart than a traditional father and son, which honestly tracks perfectly with how Zuko behaves on screen. He's chaotic, impulsive, and constantly getting into situations he shouldn't be in. And Wingard had a very specific design goal for the character too. He wanted the appeal of something like Baby Yoda, but with real danger behind it. His framing was essentially Baby Yoda if Baby Yoda would bite your face off, which is a great way to capture exactly what makes Zuko work as a character. The name itself is worth digging into. Zuko is almost certainly a shortened version of Musuko, the Japanese word for sun. That's not a coincidence. And it turns out early concept art for the character used the name Kiko, which is the name of the albino ape from the original 1933 Son of Kong film. That connection is as direct as it gets. The original movie was a 9-month rush job following the success of the first King Kong, and it showed. The son character was introduced with basically no explanation, no mother, no origin, no internal logic. He just existed as a smaller, gentler version of his father, and the film treated continuity as a suggestion. The MonsterVerse version clearly has no interest in repeating that. Every choice around Zuko feels deliberate and points towards something longer term. His physical design adds more texture to the mystery: gray skin, green eyes, longer arms, and orange-brown fur that visually echoes Scar King's coloring, which fueled early theories that he was Scar King's offspring. Warner Brothers shut that down fairly quickly, clarifying that Zuko is his own character with separate long-term plans. But the scars around his eye and cheek are still unexplained. Those came from somewhere, and whatever happened to him before Kong found him is presumably a story worth telling. His size is interesting too. Even at a young age, Zuko is physically larger than Kong was back during the events of Skull Island. That opens up a lot of possibilities around Hollow Earth biology, where the rules of surface-level evolution clearly don't apply. Things grow differently down there, and Zuko maturing faster than expected would be consistent with what the franchise has already established about that environment. The MonsterVerse films have consistently used time jumps between installments, and a gap of even a few years between The New Empire and a potential Zuko-focused movie would allow him to grow into something closer to how Kong looked when he first appeared on Skull Island. That kind of visual evolution would carry real narrative weight, because by that point, audiences will have watched him go from a chaos-causing kid being dragged around by Kong to something approaching an actual heir to the throne. That arc tracks with where Kong's story left off at the end of New Empire. He's no longer alone. He's no longer the last of his kind. He took over from Scar King and became the leader of the Hollow Earth apes. That status has to go somewhere, and leaving it unresolved in favor of back-to-back crossover events would be a genuinely weird creative choice. This is also where the imbalance in the franchise becomes hard to ignore. Godzilla has 2 solo films, a full Apple series, and constant framing as the nuclear god anchoring the entire universe. Kong got 1 solo movie in 2017, and after Skull Island, his story has only continued inside crossover events. By the time Supernova opens, nearly a decade will have passed since Kong had his own movie. Legendary has said repeatedly that Godzilla and Kong are equals in this universe. If that's actually true, then Kong's side of the franchise needs the same kind of dedicated storytelling attention that Godzilla has been receiving consistently. A Son of Kong reboot is the clearest path to fixing that imbalance. Not just as a fun Zuko character piece, but as a genuine deep dive into Hollow Earth mythology that the franchise has been circling for years without fully committing to. The ancient ape civilizations, the collapse that led to Scar King's rule, the history that Zuko is connected to in ways the audience hasn't been shown yet. All of that lore is sitting there waiting. Scar King himself was underserved in the new empire. He looked great and functioned well as an obstacle, but the film never had time to show what his reign actually cost. A Son of Kong story could fill that in retroactively. Maybe Zuko's parents were part of a resistance that failed. Maybe there are survivors still hidden in parts of Hollow Earth that haven't been mapped yet. Maybe what Zuko carries with him isn't just trauma, but information. Something he knows about Hollow Earth's deeper history that shifts the entire picture. There's also a thematic angle here that the franchise hasn't explored yet. Geo was the bridge from humans to Kong, the character who made him legible to an audience that needed an emotional translator. Zuko could eventually flip that dynamic entirely. A Titan who grows up learning to engage with humans rather than just react to them, developing something like genuine communication rather than instinct-driven behavior, would be a significant step forward for what the Monsterverse is willing to do with its monster characters. The Monarch television series has been building toward exactly this kind of Titan intelligence complexity, and a Son of Kong film could be where that thread finally pays off on the big screen. Think about what that actually means for the franchise long term. You'd have Monarch scientists studying Zuko the way linguists study a newly discovered language, and that's a genuinely fresh premise for a Monsterverse film that doesn't rely on yet another extinction-level threat as its engine. Monsterverse has collectively crossed $2.5 billion worldwide since Gareth Edwards launched it in 2014, and Warner's and Legendary do not walk away from franchises at that level. The question has never really been whether the Monsterverse continues. The question is what shape it takes after Supernova closes out whatever cosmic threat Space Godzilla represents. Son of Kong is the answer that makes the most sense creatively, commercially, and in terms of what the franchise actually owes Kong as a character after a decade of sharing screen time. The pieces are already in place. Zuko exists. Kong's arc is genuinely unfinished. The Hollow Earth is still mostly unexplored. And plans for exactly this kind of film have been in development conversations since before New Empire even started shooting. Wingard himself planted those seeds on purpose, and even though he's not directing Supernova, the groundwork he laid isn't going anywhere. The studio didn't shut down the Son of Kong concept when Wingard stepped back. There were no public statements killing it, no redirects, nothing. In Hollywood, that kind of deliberate silence around a development idea almost always means it's still alive somewhere in a writer's room. And honestly, a more grounded, character-driven Kong film after the full-scale cosmic spectacle of Supernova would be exactly the kind of tonal reset that keeps a franchise healthy rather than burned out. Not every chapter needs to be the biggest thing ever made. Sometimes the most powerful move is to slow down, go deep, and let a character actually breathe. That's what Son of Kong could be. Not just the next Monsterverse film, but the most emotionally complete one the franchise has ever attempted.